One of the reasons why lenders aren't lending and that there's a cash crunch and there's a possible breakdown of the fabric of the United States of America all the way from a personal level up to commercial real estate is inflation. And people try to wonder why, because the Fed raised it 25 basis points. They raised the rates another 25 basis points recently, in which that kind of fell under the radar for the general public. But I want to go over inflation a little bit and break it down and why it's so sticky. And I think that this is a good video to do so. And then we're going to get into the whole Steve Harvey conversation, and I'm going to let y'all come up and give y'all thoughts. Make sure you hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. I'm going to be reading Super Chat shortly. I see y'all. Let's get into it.
Everything is more expensive. Prices overall are about 13% higher than they were in April 2021, with the cost of groceries rising by nearly 20% over that time, and the cost of gas up 22%. It's even expensive to stay home. For example, the cost of electricity has surged 21%.
Reducing inflation is the number one long-term objective of central banking right now. That's true in the US as well as globally.
Sometimes inflation is like a shock because it destroys the consumer's real income.
We look back in the early days of inflation, the Fed was using this term transitory to describe inflation because they thought a lot of the things that were causing prices to go up in the near term were related to the pandemic. They thought eventually that stuff would just dissipate. Well, it really hasn't.
The Federal Reserve.
They never thought that it would dissipate. They knew that they can kick the can down the road and that somebody else would have to deal with it. Right now, the federal government is, and I'm going to break this down from a C student's perspective. Don't believe half of what you see, a minimal about what you hear, right? And then try to use your context clues in order to come to a conclusion. Let me break it down for you. One of the benefits, right? Because if you look at like Russia and China and some other countries or whatever like that, they don't have term limits. Let me tell you why that's a problem, right? Because it's a yin and yang to everything. I don't think that they have term limits in Congress. That's a problem. But then it's a problem that we do have term limits when it comes to being a president of the United States if you don't get the right candidate, right? And several other positions. And I'm going to tell you why that's a problem, all right? One of the reasons why that's a problem is because whomever it is in office has no incentive to do the thing that's right for you long term. The only thing that they're thinking about is their legacy or the short-term impacts and trying to get reelected again, right? Biden, for example, as old as he is on the tail end of his life. Okay, let me use him for an example. The debt ceiling in the United States continuously running out of money and continuing to raise the debt ceiling while black people is over here begging and asking for reparations is the perfect example to use in this situation. There is term limits, which means that each president can only be elected twice, which means that they probably only have a total of about 8 years in office. And because they have 8 years in office, they don't have to deal with the direct issues that's facing Americans or facing your children long term. And Americans and people in general are, what have you done for me right now? How am I feeling right now? They're largely not people that make long-term sacrifices for the benefit of the people that come after them, right? And so what you see is they'll continue to do the thing that makes you feel good. Is it possible for you to get reparations if you fight for it hard enough? Possibly. But who's going to pay for that? Because it's certainly not going to be you. When we look at our Social Security system, right, we're funding now people that came before us because the system is not actually solvent. So they robbing from us. They're literally doing the thing that several people have been convicted of in business. They have a Ponzi scheme coming. And so what they do is they say, we're going to rob from you in order to pay us now. And then whoever comes after us will have to figure out how it is that we can solve for it. And so it's just continuing to be a house of cards that stack on top of each other. So when you hear him say stuff like they thought that inflation was this, they didn't. They understood what it was, and they understood that continuing to print money and lowering or devaluing the cost of money or the value of a dollar in order to kick the can down the road to temporarily put a Band-Aid over a problem is not actually a solving the problem. What it is just continuing to pass the buck on to somebody else. And so you very rarely, or you will never hear inflation being at 1%, or they'll say a target of 2% or something like that, or you never hear the national deficit going down. You see they continue to talk about raising a debt ceiling, or we're going to have a stop in the government in order for things to continue to go if they don't pass these legislative branches because we put this inside of the budget in order for the Democrats and it's the Republicans and all of this and all. They all in bed together. They understand that they're not even going to live long enough to actually have to deal with the problems that they created for the general public today. And so they are incentivized to do the thing that make you feel good now because you the one that's going to continue to give them a bag and allow for them to continue to be in office. Whereas the people that come afterwards are going to do the same thing, and it's just going to be a compounding effect until everything comes crashing down, which is one of the reasons why term limits can be good or bad, depending on what the true objective of the person that got in office. If I was running for office today, I would never get elected based off of saying that, listen, we got to do the thing that's in the best interest of our children that come after us. Because then that would mean that you would have to suffer temporarily, or you couldn't do the thing that really made you feel good in order to make sure that somebody else's grandkids benefited as a result of it. Right? If the true solution, right, is for us to do the thing that is in the best interest of the people that come after us. That used to be the American way. We used to live and die in order to make the sacrifices for the people that came after us. But what we learned as a society, and then even as it came to inflation and money and all of this other type of stuff, is that the people that came after us didn't give a fuck about us, because if they did, then they would vote for the things that, or they would vote in general because people actually died for them to vote, for example, right? They would do the thing that's in our own best interest financially instead of running in the victim Olympics when people didn't even have the opportunity to do so. And so what we found as a nation is that people don't do the thing that's in their best interest. They do the thing that they forced to do when they don't have any other option. So if anybody is to actually give you the truth, if they was to tell you the truth and they would say, listen, we need to get in office, or we need to vote in a person that's office that's going to do the best thing as far as fighting terrorism and continuing to have this long-term war in order to make sure that China and Russia don't completely own the entire world because they're buying up Africa, and America owes China a ton of money and debt and all of this other type of stuff. And so we need to lower the national debt and get it from under the thumb of China so that they can't just come over here and pass laws for people that don't even make up the majority of the population, and you able to easily pass through an Asian hate crime bill. I wonder why that is, but they ain't got a black people bill or a white people bill or just a general hate crime bill. It's an Asian hate crime bill, or the LGBT community. Is because they're doing things in order to bolster their voter base to make them continue to get into office instead of doing the thing that's in the best interest of you long term. Nobody will ever get into office by telling you the truth. Everybody is going to get into office in politics by telling you the thing that makes you feel good right now. Oh yeah, we need to take money from the military in order to make sure that we bolster social programs over here in the United States. Shit. Don't you know that the military is the thing that keeps us, or that allows for us to have the power that we have nationally and internationally? That they don't have any choice but to continue to fund the military? They don't necessarily want to give a bunch of money to the military. They don't have no choice. But let's continue.
Is using the most powerful tool it has to slow down the inflation creep: interest rate hikes.
It is a very effective way. The problem is it's as much an art as a science. Different parts of the economy respond differently to changes in interest rates.
One of the things that people don't understand is that inflation really might be benefiting them in ways they don't fully acknowledge. There are winners and losers. There are certainly people in the economy for whom this is the major challenge, and there are people in the economy for whom this is a big opportunity.
So why does inflation stick around? Is anyone benefiting from it? It can occur for a number of reasons. One is supply and demand issues, meaning there's too much money to go around or not enough things to go around. Another catalyst, the cost of doing business increases, which leads to companies raising their prices. All of those things happened at scale in the past 3 years. Prices skyrocketed in a very volatile environment. But now that we're past the worst of the pandemic-induced stressors, prices are still struggling to stabilize.
It's difficult for businesses to figure out how to set exactly the right price.
When do the prices of things change? Some goods change prices frequently. If you go to the gas station, it's different every time. If you think of other things that we pay for, like college tuition or rents, or even something simple like the cost of a movie ticket, those things have lower frequency resets.
And when he said lower frequency resets, let me reset it for the C students. What he's really telling you is that the price of those things is never going to come down. The price of the brick is never going to come down. It only goes up. Even when you're talking about gas, when you're talking about food, it does like this. And it continues to go up. It may fluctuate every single time you go, but it's fluctuating up. It never goes down. You never see prices go down. You don't see deflation, you see inflation, right? It's very, very difficult to, if you went to the movies tomorrow, right? Now let's say the price, let's just use a round number. Let's say the price of a movie ticket is $10, right? And because of inflation is that they got to pay workers more money, right? They have to spend more money to make more money in order to have IMAX theaters and rumble seats, and popcorn and food is costing more money, and electricity costs more money. And so what happens is they pass that over into the consumer in order to continue to stay profitable, right? And so the price of a movie ticket in 1980 is going to be completely different than the price of a movie ticket in 2023, right? So let's say the price of a movie ticket is $10. And let's say that over the next 5 years, it grows to be $15. But then somehow, some way, they're able to drive down the costs of what it takes in order for them to operate that movie theater. Do you think that they're going to then pass those savings over into the consumer? Or do you think that that price is built into the head of the consumer, which also means that inflation will truly never go down in the first place? Why would they lower the price when they're getting more profitability? The thing that people look to do is they look to save money in other ways, which is one of the reasons why you see more layoffs. They say, listen, we got ChatGPT, we got technology, we can do more with less, but we certainly not going to lower the prices because the price of the brick is already built into the mind of the consumer. People never go in and say, man, why is this so much lower? They don't. They don't say that. They say, ooh, prices is high now. It cost me $100 just to go to the movie with me and my 2 kids, right? The price of inflation is built into the minds of the people, which means that you'll never, ever see that savings being passed over into the consumer. When the last time you seen tuition go down? When the last time you seen tuition go down? You never see tuition go down. You will never see tuition go down. You won't see rents go down. You won't see tuition go down. You won't see mortgages go down. You may see interest rates go down, but you won't see the price of the house itself that you're purchasing go down. Because it's much easier to pass on the cost and then keep the savings even when you can lower the cost, because that is not passed on to the price of the consumer. I've never actually raised the rents on any of the tenants for any of the places that I've lived in. Ever. You know why? Because I'm a good steward. I'm a good guy. I believe in deflation. I believe in sharing the cost and passing that over into the consumer, because I build relationships with people. I don't just do business with them, right? And so when you start to understand, again, remembering that it always comes back to the money, when you start to understand how things work, then you start to look at it from a business perspective, even in your relationship. How many times have it cost you less the longer that you've been in a relationship with somebody? It never does. It stays the same or it goes up, which is why I tell guys that you don't start off with the speed of Olympic sprinters, because you can't maintain it. Inflation is in your relationship, right? First, you got a coffee date if you smart. Some of y'all dumb motherfuckers want to take her to Ruth Chris on the first time, and you setting the expectation right out the gate, bleeding and giving her everything that she wants, and then she's going to later come back and say, you used to take me out, or you used to give me flowers every day. You can never go, you can't pass that savings on as you get married. Combining households is supposed to be it's supposed to be a savings. You guys are supposed to be basically combining forces like Voltron in order to conquer the world. But relationships have now become basically a very, very close mimic of what we experiencing in society as far as inflation and recession and the Fed continuing to raise rates. They raising rates in your relationship also, because now she wants to scale up. You know what? Now we can go out. When you going to take me to Ruth Chris? Now society is said that you got to give 3 months salary, 6 months salary in order to get her a ring. Right now, y'all got to buy a house together. When we going to go on vacation? Now we got to have kids. The cost of having kids is continuing to skyrocket. Now we got to fund those kids' education and put them in private school and possibly pay for their tuition. And you still want kids? You still trying to compare yourself to a recessionary period in which guys was having kids or people was having kids in the early 1900s, the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, when you don't even understand that the true cost of having the kids mean that you need to pare back so you can pass that savings along and reduce the burden that a man has to very, very much experience in order to have kids. Having kids is not a privilege anymore. Having kids is a burden for a lot of y'all, right? What kind of job? You can't just get out of high school and go get a job no more. Inflation hits every aspect of what it is that you're doing because society is dictating, similar to what Miss James is saying. Ruth Chris has been bought out by Olive Garden. People don't even want to go to Olive Garden no more, and they're using the same fucking ingredients. The same ingredients. The cost is not being passed over into the consumer. The cost is just continuing to go up, and the price of the brick is going up. So now, instead of you trying to figure out how to lower the cost, then you have to continue to beat the rate of inflation. And that is an everlasting task for y'all. And a lot of y'all are unable to really, really capture what it takes in order to be successful in relationships and business. And that's why I tell y'all that you can't separate one from the other, because it's all the same thing. How you operate in your relationship is going to be a reflection of how it is that you operate in your business and how you operate in corporate America and whether or not you network effectively. And so you got to have the same mindset all the way across the board.
It's difficult for consumers to do their shopping. If you put something in your shopping basket and you come back the next morning and it's a different price, you might feel not good about that and not like the firm that's doing that to you. And because of these reasons, the firms often leave their prices stable for a period of time. Inflation also has a funny component that's expectations driven, meaning if we expect prices to go up in the future, it's probably going to happen.
If we think, for example, that inflation is going to stay higher for longer, I will be inclined to price that in because I only get to reset my prices once or twice a year. So I'm building in an expectation that inflation may stay higher for longer. Actually doing that may mean inflation stays higher for longer.
But if I expect for prices to be stable, if I'm convinced the Federal Reserve is going to do their job and get rid of inflation and stabilize prices, well, I should stabilize my prices as well. So
You will never, ever be able to price in savings or deflation. The only thing that you can do is price in inflation. It's always going to cost you more. It's going to cost your kids more. It's going to cost your great-grandkids more. And so a lot of us think that we can save our way to wealth, and we can't. You can't save your way to wealth. Inflation is it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. And every single thing that you do is going to cost you more. The price of the brick is going to cost you more. The price of pussy is going to cost you more. The price of flying is going to cost you more. And even a lot of y'all are spending money and saying that y'all passport bros. Y'all spending money just to go and spend money on hoes overseas because you can't find no women and that you identify as feminine anymore over here in the United States of America. You get into the bag to go and pay for pussy in a completely different country. That's called inflation. That's literally the very definition of what inflation is.